Now turning to our main news, that visit by EU Economics Commissioner Olli Rehn. Before Commissioner Rehn left this evening, we spoke to him. I began by asking him what might persuade international bond markets to resume lending to Ireland at reasonable rates.
I think first of all to complete the financial repair or the repair of the banking sector. We know the total costs already, but it's important to complete that work. And secondly, which I would say is now in fact the first and foremost priority, is to agree on a 4-year fiscal plan to meet the 3% target of deficit reduction, of fiscal deficit by 2014.
Of course, the 6 billion figure was announced recently, and the markets were unimpressed. In fact, our lending rate went up. Why will the additional measures you're talking about in terms of the 4-year plan and the budget detail make any difference?
In fact, I believe that the markets have not yet internalized this plan and these decisions because they are still at the planning stage. Once they have been decided by the government, then I trust by the parliament, they will have a real effect, and then the market forces believe that Ireland is ready and able to cope with the formidable fiscal challenges.
I suppose one judgment they're making at the moment is that the figures just don't add up. If you make this kind of adjustment, the economic activity is depressed to such an extent that there isn't going to be the growth there that's going to allow us to meet these targets.
Ireland is facing a very difficult dilemma. It has spreads, bond spreads for the moment around 8%, which is extremely costly for the sovereign and for the taxpayers. And thus there is the dilemma of how to strike the right balance between enhancing credibility of fiscal policy to have a positive impact by front-loading of the budget measures and the negative short-term impact on growth at the same time. There is no easy way out, but one essential thing is that the composition of the measures should be such that they have the least negative impact.
The 6 billion has been signed off on by Brussels, by the Commission. Is our budget going to be signed off on by Brussels? Is it going to have to be sanctioned?
I expect that the budget will concretise and materialize the plans for next year, worth 6 billion euros of reduction of the public sector deficit. Once that is done, then of course at the same time the medium-term or 4-year fiscal plan should be in line with meeting the targets. These are the ways to convince both the people and the markets that the very deteriorating debt dynamics can be put under control.
The figure the government has put on getting our debt GDP ratio down to 3% by 2014 is 15 billion. That's the adjustment they say is going to be necessary. Do you think that's going to be sufficient, or could it be higher?
We are actually currently assessing the needs for the next 4 years. I think what is essential now is that next year is clear there will be a decision shortly by the government, by the parliament, and both the people and the markets will know that next year will start another major round of fiscal consolidation, which in the medium term will help sustainable growth and employment in the country.
Commissioner, if next year we do indeed have to turn to the Stability Fund and the International Monetary Fund, and we need their help, how different would be the conditions placed on Ireland in those circumstances to what we're going through at the moment? How much tougher might it be than the adjustments that might be put through by our own sovereign government?
There is no request made by the Irish government to resort to the European Financial Stability Facility, and it's very difficult to respond to any speculative questions.
You were an advisor to the Finnish government when it went through a similar economic crisis. Now, I'm sure there are many aspects to how that was dealt with, but looking at the parallels, and you've talked about the parallels between Ireland and Finland at that stage, are there lessons to be learned? Are there lessons that we can learn?
I'm usually quite cautious of providing lessons from one unique experience to another unique experience. But I think there is one or two lessons. One is that it's important to take action rather sooner than later, take determined action, cut the fiscal deficit, put the fiscal house in order, and at the same time conduct such kind of structural measures that will help enhance economic growth and employment. And the second lesson is that it is important that in the modern economy education and innovation are prioritized because they are such fundamental drivers of economic growth. They are the foundation of economic growth and job creation. Ireland has a very well educated and skilled labour force, and I think that's one treasure which has to be preserved and further developed so that Ireland can prosper and can overcome this current crisis.
Commissioner Rehn, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.
The Croke Park Agreement could